Wow, it's really dark. I'm gonna shut some. This is very interesting. That this is one of my groups that they actually shut a lot of the doors.
Oh.
They do that as a way to make sure they didn't leave anything.
Oh, okay.
So this room here is the largest resident room in the building. The majority of the rooms have beds, dressers, lockers, personal items, things like that. But this is the biggest that we have. We've had groups over the years donate a lot of the bedding. So most of the beds have some sort of covering, pillow. So if you really get tired and you want to take a nap, go right ahead. There are also a bunch of toys. Now there were some toys here, but over the years, lots more have shown up. There's a little girl here, and her name is Suzanne, but they call her Susie. She was not the child of someone that lived here. She was dropped off and left here. I don't know when, and I don't know why, but she's between the ages of 7 and 10. She does play with the toys. I have seen things light up and make noise when no one is around them. I've seen balls roll around on the floor when no one is touching them. Objects have actually moved from room to room when no one else is here. I've heard her sing. She loves to run up and down the hallways. She also peeks out the windows. And by report, she's been known to try to tug on your clothes or try to hold your hand.
Yeah.
So she's very friendly. Originally she wasn't. She didn't know what was going on and wasn't very communicative. And then a lot of toys started showing up, and I have no idea if this was her room, but this seems to be where a lot of the toys are. Okay. There are toys everywhere, but this is one of the places. There's a resident that lived here. This place was open until November of 2010. Okay. This building was built in 1911.
And it was originally an old folks home?
County Poor Farm. Oh. Now the Poor Farm, there was a couple of white farmhouses. The Poor Farm was a system all over the country, and if you were homeless or got arrested, you got sent to the Poor Farm. Now the Poor Farm was a working farm. They had crops, they had animals. If you lived here, you had to work. Oh. And that's how you paid back your debt to society. Right. So you got a bed, you got a place. Sometimes there would have been moms and kids here. Very rarely were there entire families here, like mom, dad, and kids. Mom and kids would have to come to a place like this if, like, say, dad died on the farm, and way back when females couldn't own property, so the bank would take it and kick them off, and they'd have to go someplace until other family could collect them. And they could use places like this. Up until 1929, when the Depression hit the country, that's kind of how it ran. And then after that point, the counties just basically took them over. This one was ran by the county until 2004, and then it was leased to another outside company until they closed in 2010. But after the Depression, the only people here were adults. No longer were there any kids. And the majority of the adults, even when it first started, either were poor or they were nuts. And we know a lot more about mental illness than they did back then, so we're not entirely sure how they defined insane. Right. I've talked to some locals who just remember family members being the odd ones, and they got put in the county home. So it's kind of hit or miss. But there is a gentleman that lived in this room when they closed in 2010. His name is Eric, and he lives over in Monticello now. And he has some issues, but he's able to live on his own, but he still receives some services. And Eric was 27 when he first became a resident of the manor, and this year he will be 41. Huh. So it's not like it was an old folks' home. Right. There were elderly people here, but it just wasn't for old people. Yeah. So he stops by and sees me every so often. If I would let him stay, he probably would. Yeah. He really liked it here. And we've talked to some other folks that, used to work here. You'd ask some of them some stories, Japanese stories, and I talked to a nurse who said, when a resident came to us and said they saw or heard something, we just really didn't believe them because everybody was nuts. Oh. And so they didn't, it was difficult, kind of hard to see what we were going. I'm trying to find my key because this other door is empty, broken. And
then isn't there like potter's graves on the site?
Yep, it's highly likely. If you were a resident and you passed away, if you had family, they would generally come and collect you and take you back to wherever you were from. If if you didn't have family, highly likely the place would bury you, because at that time they really didn't have a good way to, it's really hard to bury a body. But they would bury you, but we're not entirely sure where. Now there is a little cemetery across the road. It's just down, it's a pioneer cemetery, it's not locked, not gated, you're welcome to go walk through that. But the newest gravestone that I can actually identify is around 1880.
Wow.
So that predates this building.
Yeah.
We are told that some locals remember more across the road, so the cemetery's down over there, kind of across from that shed.
Mm-hmm.
More across the road was where they buried people. Now we do know that several years ago some kids were playing in the gully back over there, and they did find some human remains. They had been there for a really long time. They were whitewashed. They'd been there for a long time.
Yeah.
We're also, given information. It's hard to verify, but potentially in the back corner of the ranch house yard, that maybe people were buried back there as well. I don't know that for sure. I do know that on the census that is listed, it's online. You can find it. It's from 1876 to 1911. So just when this one was finished. There is a gentleman's name on that census that I met, a descendant of his. He and his wife randomly showed up one day. I was just getting done with a tour, and that is his great, I don't know how many greats, but it's his grandpa. So it's verified that he was a resident of the poor farm.
Okay.
Nobody knows where grandpa's buried.
Wow.
So he's convinced he's buried here somewhere.
Yeah.
Possible. I have no idea.
Right.
But he's not going
No,
to
no.
dig up my yard.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
Is this the hanging room?
As you can see, this room here, normally it's always open because, oops. It is a self-locking door. So if you guys are out there and this door closes, you will not be able to get back in.
Oh, okay.
So maybe just avoid this room altogether.
Well, in the 1950s, this was actually somebody's room. His
Wow.
bed was against the back wall over there, and he would have had a locker or a dresser for his belongings. His name is Paul, and Paul had always lived at home with Mom. But when Mom passed away, it was one of those situations where family didn't know what to do with him, so they stuck him in the county home, and he did not like it here. We're told he was here for a week, and this was not a hospital, it wasn't a locked facility. He could have left, and he could have walked out the front door anytime. By law, they're supposed to try to find you, but sometimes they don't try very hard.
Right.
But he decided to hang himself instead, and he did hang himself in this room. And everybody looks up.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He actually hung himself on the doorknob.
And the doorknob, yeah.
And we've spoken to a live person who was here that day, saw him still attached, dead. He can't remember the year. This gentleman's in his 80s now, so but he remembers the incident like it was yesterday. So it's early 53, 4, 5 time period. Highly likely this is the original door, but they did turn it into a mop closet, so self-locking handle, not original handle.
Yeah.
But if you want to hang out in here and you want to shut the door while you're inside, you should be able to get back out.
Okay.
Should.
Paul's room.
Well,
Remember
not
that.
everybody come in the room at once.
Okay.
So there's more resident rooms, bathrooms and stuff down the hallway. And then we are in the men's wing.
Yeah, the door just closed behind us.
Again?
Out there, did you guys hear that? It sounded like a door closing.
I think it was when this door opened, it hit the wall or something.
It sounded like it was more out that way though. I don't know.
Oh, no.
So this is kind of like a parlor room,
Well,
or?
they would have had common areas. Their sleeping quarters would have been separated, but they would have mingled. They would have done games and activities
Right.
and hung out in areas. So they had things for them to do: the pool table, TVs, books, games.
What's the story on the barber chair?
I don't know if it's barber or dental, but it has always been here. And I learned the hard way that the arms are not connected to the back. And it's moving. I'm like, oh crap, that's what it is. It's a very, very heavy chair.
I'm sure.
Looks like it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's always been here. My guess way back when, they would have performed dental procedures.
I suppose
or-
probably brought a,
Yeah, because down at the other end, there is a room that has a hair washing sink, literally the, part where your neck is.
Oh,
They have
yeah.
one of those, so
okay,
was the chair down there? I don't know. But it's
Yeah.
always been in this corner here.
okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at the ceiling, how the paint's just dripping off.
I have swept up a lot of paint. We got possession in October of 11, and when we looked at it, it had heat, had running water, it had just closed. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And we put a bid in and won. Huh, who knew? But by the time we got back, the county had blown the lines and shut the heat off, and paint does not like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh dear Lord, now what do I do? We didn't buy the building to do this. We bought the building to preserve it so that some developer couldn't come in and tear it down. That's the only reason we have it. I'll tell you the story why this gets to happen.
Yeah.
We both have had experiences that we can't explain. We don't ghost hunt, we don't watch the TV shows. And when Ghost Adventures that show aired, we actually had to go to Waterloo to watch it. My mom was the only one that had TV that was
Yeah.
Now, you saw the main staircases. We actually use that, the up and down. That's your main. Each wing has back staircases as well. You don't ever have to use these. We just do this on the tour. But the thing to know about these is they're steel heavy doors, right? So listen, you heard a door.
Right.
They do that when you're somewhere else.
Wow, okay.
And these are the only ones that are like that in here, basically.
Well, I've had those doors slam on me as I walk through them before. I try very hard to make sure that the blocks are stuck pretty good, but I've had one of those slam on me, so those are steel doors as well.
Okay.
Most of the resident rooms and things like that are just gonna be your hardwood doors. I don't know if they're solid core doors or not, some of them maybe, some of them probably aren't, but, our dog gets stuck in these stairwells. We don't push her there, and when I'm here and she's here, I make sure she stays on this side, because this one particularly slams hard.
Yeah.
And once you go through there, you're gonna see, think of yourself as a dog, you're gonna look
Right.
first, and if you look too long, the door's gonna cut your head off.
Right.
But she has ended up in these stairwells anyway, and we have no idea how,
Wow.
because she cannot open the door.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
gonna go upstairs,
All
through a
right.
door that looks like this, and just kinda hang out up there, I'll tell you about the attic.
Okay.
Your attic entrances are in your back stairwells. So should you choose to go up to the attic, there's brown doors that are here.
Okay, there it is. Okay.
Now, there's blown-in insulation all over the floor. When you get to the top of these stairs, you'll see a small space, and then you will see a wooden catwalk. You have to stay on
On
the
that
catwalk.
otherwise you'll fall through.
Well, not necessarily. I do know I have 2 weak spots in the floor. It's a solid floor, but there are a couple of weak spots. But you don't want to walk in the insulation.
Right, yeah.
The other thing is, make sure you close the door behind you, because unless you turn around, you're gonna come out on the other end. The catwalk literally goes all the way across
Yeah.
the building. The other thing is, make sure you have more than one light, because if you lose your light source.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'll be crawling on the catwalk to try to find your way
Yeah.
out.
Got like 6 of them, so.
It's really, really dark. So other resident rooms, your balcony ends are like the common area, like where the pool table is. They have this little common area here, and then a room inside. This one actually used to be too. You can kind of see on the door where the wall used to be,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the door on the wall where the door used to be. And so that used to be 2 resident rooms, and then they cut that off and just made it into a double.
Now, one of these rooms has a note from the gentleman that says, "Don't move in here. This is
Yeah,
my
I
room."
think someone stole it. I have not been able to find it.
Oh.
It could have slid under the dresser, under the locker.
What was it? This room?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the
Yeah.
room. This was Rusty's room. Rusty
Yeah.
had a note
Yeah,
that
Rusty,
said he
yeah.
did not- No one has permission to come into my room.
Yeah. Last time we were here, he had a note like laying right on the bed or here or something.
Yeah,
and-
sometimes it was on. I found it one time behind the dresser, but I haven't looked real hard, but I just haven't seen
Yeah.
it. So I'm not sure where it is.
I'm just curious.
What was his name, Rusty?
Yes.
Yep.
Or those Rusty shoes?
Well, they were here, so I don't know. There are personal items. Yes.
So
Sir.
Rusty's the joker.
Well, not necessarily. We're not sure.
Nobody knows. So, just not to get off the topic, but
What?
do you know the gentleman in the green Silverado
Why
who
is
drives
he-
around here? We've seen him several times since
We stopped at the hula hoop tree and he stopped and talked to us there and then he kind of followed us here and
He
he's
was
kind of,
stopped, he was stopped over
I
here.
saw him, he was
and then-
out there
and
when
then-
Yeah.
And then when we went and moved our cars, he was stopped over
When-
here, and then now he's
When we
stopped
drove by,
over
he
there.
was at that
I
restaurant.
mean, he said
that-
he lives like right by here, but I'm just curious if.
Did he say what his name was? What does he look like?
Did he say?
he's a local, he's from here.
He's kind of young, not really younger. He's a little bit older. I mean, he's obviously older than us.
His
but-
grandpa owns the pasture where the hula hoop tree is, I guess, or something.
Oh,
Or his
his
uncle?
grandpa, I bet it's a Zirkelbach.
Hmm.
It's not Nick, because Nick, was he like, oh, he was in his vehicle, did you ever see him get out?
He didn't. Yeah, he
Nick's a
never
young
got
guy,
out.
he's only like 24 or 5, and he's
Oh,
very
this
tall.
guy was older than that.
Yeah.
It could be because Zirkelbachs own the land where the hula hoop tree is. Nick actually mows my lawn. And so he's probably a relative.
Yeah.
I was just curious because he's
Could
just
be
like.
Jordan.
It's a little stalky, it looks, it
Yeah,
seems
it
like.
is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It is kinda weird. I've not
Like,
seen that
he-
vehicle
he-
before.
He left, and then that like restaurant deal in the old barn.
Yeah, he was
He was
pulling out of there.
He was
is when we
pulling out of
drove
there
by.
when we drove by, and then he was there, here, and now he's there.
I know,
Well,
yeah.
when we
We'll
get
just
done,
have
if he's
to-
outside, I will go chat with him.
Yeah.
Let him know that he needs to vacate. It is kind of creepy.
It is a little, yeah.
I mean, I'm not really scared, but it's just weird.
Yeah, a little
And
stalkerish.
now that this whole, virus thing is all over the place, I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot more looky loos because people don't have squat to do.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Right.
it'll
Balloon.
be.
There's a balloon.
My general rule of thumb is, if you're here and someone drives by and they just drive through and they leave, you can ignore them.
Yeah.
If they stop and, or by the front door they get out and they come up and they can read the sign and then they leave, you can ignore them. If they try to get in, then you can say, look, if you want to visit, here's the information. It's on the front door, take a picture. And then you have permission to be here, they don't. So you could say, we're here for the night, you need to contact them if you want to visit, you need to leave.
Right,
If they
yeah.
choose not to leave, then call the sheriff.
Okay.
But the one thing everybody forgets is y'all have phones. Take their picture and their vehicle picture
Right.
because that's the
Yeah.
only way that we can catch them. We
Yeah,
have cameras, but it's always after the fact,
right.
and so it's difficult. We're gonna go into the red curtain room,
Okay.
red room. So this room here also used to be too. You can see where the walls were.
Oh, yeah.
We've always called this the red room. It's always had red curtains. And then at the opposite end, well, you can't see it. The door at the opposite end is now closed, has blue curtains in that room.
Okay.
These two rooms have a different energy. And some people can feel it, and some people can't. And what I mean by that, which you guys probably already know, is that if you're feeling nauseous, if you're feeling heaviness, if you're feeling the tingles, if you're, feeling followed,
Just step
whatever.
out.
Those rooms do have that more so than other places. There is a shadow figure in this room, and he paces in the hallway, or in the corner over there. He's very large, and he's stooped. Now, we were told about him from a Jones County deputy sheriff. They've told us that this facility was their #1 call. Essentially, if a staff can't find a resident, they have to call the sheriff after such amount of time, and then they would come out and do searches. And he was here that night, hit this doorway, and immediately saw the person pacing back and forth over there.
Wow.
There is evidence that there is a similar looking person that stands in the doorway of that room. I don't
The one
know
on
if
the
they're
far
the
end.
same
Okay.
one. Yes. That is the women's wing. We're also told that that person believes that it's his job to protect females. So that's why he hangs out down there. I don't know if they're the same person or not. I do know that one of the original stewards of the Poor Farm was a Thomas King. Now the stewards, they called them stewards and matron. Usually it's a husband and wife. Those are the people that ran the place. And then when that system collapsed, then counties just kind of took them over, like other group homes would have had 3 shift workers, all that stuff. But I've talked to a descendant of Thomas King's, and she remembers growing up of an uncle that lived here. I don't know how long ago, I don't know what his age was, but he did live here in this room, and he did die here. She also described him as a very large man.
Oh.
I don't know if they're the same or not. I don't have enough corroborating information to
Right.
say one way or the other.
Right.
But I do
Okay.
know that particular exhibit.
And we're on the men's wing side of the
We're
building,
south
right?
men's wing, yes.
Okay,
We're at the front of the building, so this is where you were.
okay, yep.
This probably is my favorite room. It's very light and airy, and it's also a very large resident room.
Yeah,
But a lot of people have taken pictures and they get images in the windows. You know, I have a book downstairs that has a lot of pictures in it. You can take a look at, see if you see anything.
mm-hmm,
I do know there's a picture of that dresser on our website. I cannot get it. It's one of those where I can't right click and copy. So don't have a copy of it, but there is a woman in the mirror. I know that a man took the picture at an angle, and you can see her in the mirror.
I think I've seen that picture.
yeah.
And she's kind of wispy,
Yeah.
elderly looking to me.
We're gonna experiment with some photography tonight. He brought his
Is there
camera.
like anything that you're curious about? Like, out of all the times people have been here, like, is there anything that you would ever like want to know?
I like to know, I want to be able to corroborate other things. We know about Susan, we know a lot of people have encountered her, so she's one I have a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
from that standpoint. Do I know anything about her life in real life? No, I really
Right.
don't know anything about that. I've had people suggest that the guy that lives in the basement, otherwise known as the Joker, has the name of Rusty. I've also had people tell me that that's not his name, so I don't know what his name is. I have always called him the guy that lives in the basement.
Right.
And he got the name the Joker long before the TV show. The TV show didn't make up that name. He is ornery. He's mischievous, but we've never ever gotten the feeling that he's any kind of malevolent being.
Okay.
I've seen people scratched.
Yeah, scratched,
I
yeah.
have seen
Yeah, about that.
a lady, we walked downstairs and into the room in the basement, and she immediately grabbed her throat, and she said that somebody had a hold of her, and I'm like, do you need to leave? And she's like, no, I'm fine. And so she was experiencing that.
Right.
But I've also had people report being terrified. There was one girl, we had a large event after we first started doing this, and she was in the basement. We were on the second or the first floor. I think we were on the first floor, and she came running up the stairs and ran out the building, and she just sat on the steps and sobbed because something had her and would not let her go. So it runs the gamut, but for us personally, I've never gotten any malevolent. He's ornery. I've been pushed. I've had my hair pulled. He does do that.
Okay.
But
All right.
Is any of that typically when somebody's by themselves down there, or does it happen in groups too? or-
the one thing that we have learned over the years is that the activity is consistent,
Okay.
but it's not consistently active.
Right.
So, I've not had anybody tell me that the guy that lives in the basement is anywhere but the basement. I've not had them, but I've seen people scratch on the second floor.
Right.
So was that him? I don't know.
Right.
There's a lady that is down the hallway. She's an elderly woman. She has longer hair than the lady in the mirror, but people have seen her as well. But I don't know what her name is. So it's hard to answer the question on. Yes, I would love to have information. I would prefer a narrative over video or audio.
Right.
Just because then I have something tangible that I can spit back out. It's hard to point people to it. And a lot of groups have their own websites and that kind of stuff. And then I just say, you want to look at evidence, YouTube Edinburgh Manor.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You should be able
And
to.
that's like one thing, at least most of us, I mean, he's been here before, but we've kind of tried to stay away from, because we don't want to, it's hard when you go to locations, because you don't want to learn too much about like specific rooms, because then you go in and then you build yourself up to what you think is supposed to happen when you go
Right.
into that room. So I kind of want to just
Okay, I'll
kind of fit. No, it's
I
no,
never
it's not.
know.
It's nice to have information.
Yeah, no, it's not, like I want to kind of know the history and kind of the gist of the place.
Yep.
But yeah, I just like I don't want to also know too much where I'm.
Sounds
okay,
good.
this is what's supposed to happen in this room when we go here. So.
No,
Yeah.
nothing ever happens the same all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's good because, like I say, because then you build it up in your head, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna see something when I go in this room. So then you're already building up in your head, like I'm gonna see something. So I'm like, oh god, I saw something. And I know there's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
and could be in your mind,
Yeah,
you know.
Well, yeah, because you're already putting it in your mind that you're gonna see something when you go into this room. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. 'Cause, yeah, I mean, just like the general history. So like I've watched another video. I don't think it was Jones County, but who was it? It was another paranormal group. They did an interview with you on there. And you kind of talked about
Jonah?
the history.
Jonah Jones, maybe?
Maybe.
Don't Paranormal.
It might have been
Yeah,
Jones
Jonah
County.
interviewed me. Yeah, the history of it is that's one of the reasons that we bought the place, is because in today's society we are losing history left and right.
Right.
People are, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. Yes, it did happen, and
Right.
you have to accept that it happened, whether you wanted it to or not. And places like this are being torn down.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you lose that because the people who have the knowledge are dying.
Mhm.
And we used to be a society of storytellers.
Right.
And, kids and kids and kids and kids don't get those stories.
Right.
Yeah.
And then by the time everybody else is dead, then you can't pass your story on.
I know, yeah, it's sad.
It is, it's
Yeah.
very sad.
And that's what I was telling people too, that's why I like doing this kind of thing, just to like see the history of places, like even like historical, that are actually like well kept from like 1800s,
Right.
all original hardwood floors and woodworking. But then it's also nice to come to see places like this too, that are, they're kind of like slowly deteriorating a little bit, but you still get the history
Right.
of it. I love both sides of the spectrum. I absolutely love it.
I do have some doors that are locked on purpose.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you try to open one and they don't, and then others are just closets and
Alrighty.
resident rooms and things like that. Main staircase here.
Yeah, here's the central staircase.
So yeah, this is where you come up and down. I just gotta make sure, I don't think I have any of the doors that actually self-lock, but I just wanna make sure before I go.
Yeah. I brought the Somerville jacket. but
we have A big common room here.
Already.
So upstairs, you can see how there's some carpet. They tried to, do a little more home stuff, try to make people feel comfortable. These are all single rooms. So you've got, your own space. Whoever lived in this room got to paint their room purple. This one doesn't have a bed, it's never had a bed. Still like to put a bed here. Haven't done that. Yeah.
Now, didn't your husband or somebody get their toe touched or something in one of these rooms?
Room 200. Room 200 is the one right by the top of the stairs. That's what started it all.
Wasn't he laying in the bed with the dog or something?
When we first bought the place, again, we didn't know this stuff happened. So he decides he's going to spend the night here by himself. And he has the dog, and he picks room 200 because the hallway has always given him a weird, interesting feeling. Now, he's a physics guy, so everything's related to that. So he calls me up. It's about midnight. And he's just chilling, and I'm not real comfortable with him being here by himself. I'm like, you need to come home. He's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. And so he's laying in the bed. He's got covers, and the dog's here. And pretty soon, I'm like, he's like, everything's fine. Nothing's going to happen. And he says, except for this moment, something's touching my foot. I'm like, knock it off. It's like, no, I'm totally serious. Something is touching my foot. And I didn't believe him until the dog went nuts. She popped up out of a dead sleep. She's facing the end of the bed, and she's now doing this bark growl thing that we had never heard her do.
Yeah.
And it was, I lost it. I'm like, you need to leave. He's like, why? I'm like, I don't know why, but you need to go.
Yeah.
And because, I can honestly tell you, I had never heard the dog bark up until that point. She's just a really, really good dog, but she lost it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can see my feet. There's nothing there. And then she eventually calmed down. She sat down. She went to sleep. Probably 15, 20 minutes goes by. She does it again. Up she pops. Hair all over, barking, growling. She gets off the bed, and she knows they have radiators, like those radiator caps. You can see them. But she was nose to nose with the radiator. He's like, I can see it. There's nothing there. But she is
The dog sensed something.
She was mad. And then she does the same thing. She curls up, goes to sleep, and he stayed. We talked about 2 a.m. and nothing else happened. But he wasn't sleeping very well. But he didn't leave. When he told me that something was touching his foot, literally it was a squeezing of his big toe over and over again. Very distinct squeezing. So we didn't say anything to anybody. He knew, I knew, the dog knew. We didn't tell a soul.
Right.
But his nephew learned that we bought the place and he stayed here and something happened. So he asked if he and a friend could do an investigation. At that time, we didn't even know what that word meant. We don't watch the TV shows. Like that, no. So we blew him off a couple times, but he was pretty relentless. So finally we said, okay, he and a friend came out. There was just 2 of them. They had flashlights and handheld recorders, nothing fancy. So they knew that he spent the night in the building, and they knew that something happened. But we didn't tell them what happened or what room it happened in. Next morning, nephew calls up very excited. He's like, you have to hear what we caught. You guys all know what that means. We had no clue what that
Right.
meant, so it took some learning on
Yeah.
this. So he emailed the EVP to Uncle, and we heard it at separate times. When I finally hear it, I can hear the guys ask what we have since learned are probably typical questions learned from the TV shows.
Right.
Tell us your name, give us a sign, we're not here to hurt you. One of them said, did someone stay here? We see there's blankets on the bed. At that time, room 200 was the only room in the building that had any blankets on the bed. And then the other kid said, did you do something to them? So you just hear them talk. At the point the kid said, did you do something to them? On top of that, plain as day, you hear, I grabbed you, in this guttural whisper. I'm like,
Yeah.
what was that?
Wow.
No. And I listened to it on a laptop without headphones. And I probably listened to it half an hour over and over again. I'm like, there's no flipping way.
Yeah.
Because again, he knew, I knew, dog knew, we didn't tell a soul.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then nephew put that out there on Facebook. And so it just blossomed from there. We had paranormal investigative teams contact us, and we didn't buy the building to do this. This just is kind of a byproduct of having a place like this.
And that's where, when I was here with Apex Iowa, we had the motion detector go off inside that room.
Oh, room 200.
Yeah.
The hallway, again, tends to be active. The other thing I can tell you, if you like, this is an interesting story about the dog. I don't know if it's the first or second floor, but I'm standing in the middle, and I look at one of the ends. You can see how it's the terrazzo floors or the tile floors.
Right.
Terrazzo on that side, tile on that side. Well, I saw a tennis ball go fly, and then I saw the dog go. She got it and went back to the room. Tennis ball, dog, tennis. Did it like 3 or 4 times. That tennis ball never touched the floor.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Dog made a friend to play fetch.
All right, now there's the women's side.
Yeah, now we have into the women's wing. I'm gonna go ahead and open
Yeah.
Let it go.
exam room, I think. Then there's some closets and other rooms. So this is the blue curtain room. You can see blue curtains. Again, another room that used to be 2.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they opened it up. The doorways were there, the hallway. So this is kind of where the bigger gentleman stands.
Okay.
There's other things in the room, but some people have experienced them and some people haven't. So you just kind of have to watch. But we are on the women's wing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured we'd do. We're gonna go grab, there's a Mexican restaurant somewhere nearby. I think we're gonna grab
Monticello?
something to go and bring it back and eat it. But usually what we like to do is we'll place recorders around. We'll find different spots, because that's kind of, we did Beatty Mansion in Missouri, and we actually got some really good EVPs on recorders, so.
Yeah. Yes, we've had a couple of people, one guy especially, he's been doing this for like 30 plus